Hare Krishna. Please support our channel by taking 1 second of your precious time to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, today is Chaturdashi of Krishna Paksha of Govinda Mas, and this is the very auspicious festival of Mahasivaratri, the celebration of Lord Shiva. Now there's not very clear understanding, at least I could not find one, why the festival is celebrated. Somebody say it's appearance of Lord Shiva, somebody say it's time of his dance of destruction, somebody says it's the time when he married Parvati. In any case, I didn't find any conclusive evidence what Mahashivaratri is actually about, at least. Maybe I should have done my research a little longer. In any case, it's definitely the only festival of Lord Shiva in a year, like official festival of Lord Shiva, a big festival that we know of, and it's a wonderful opportunity to glorify the greatest devotee of the Lord, Vaishnava Yatha Shambhu, Lord Shiva. So we do exactly that. It's there will be a wonderful festival in Jagannath Mandir tonight. A lot of kirtans and glorifications of Lord Shiva as the devotee, our greatest devotee of the Lord. Of course, we never worship Shiva separately from the Lord, and as a lot of people do, a lot of Hindus do worship Shiva as a supreme Lord. But as devotees, we know that Shiva is the greatest devotee. And of course, the evidence of it is there in Srimad Bhagavatam. So I thought that the best course of us celebrating it on our Sacred Space podcast is to discuss the very famous pastime of Lord Shiva and Daksha, right? The Daksha who has offended Lord Shiva when he and his wife Sati attained the sacrifice. Then Lord Shiva left, and then again Sati wanted to go to visit her parents, and Shiva said, it's maybe not a good idea after your father have offended me, and you will not be able to tolerate it, and something bad will happen if you go again. But yet she went there, and exactly what Shiva predicted has happened. Daksha offended Shiva, and she renounced the father, and she quit her body by invoking the fire, right? And then of course Lord Shiva was very furious, and his followers, they completely desecrated the sacrifice and beheaded Daksha, and actually created a lot of havoc there. Now I will start reading from the 6th chapter of the of the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Brahma satisfies Lord Shiva. So we'll just read the verses, because as it is, it's a long story. If there would be some interesting or the point which we need to elaborate on, we'll consult Srila Prabhupada's commentary, which we always should do, but for the purpose of today's reading, we just want to have the flow of what's going on. Okay, so we'll start reading. Brahma satisfied Lord Shiva. All the priests and other members of sacrificial assembly and all the demigods, having been defeated by the soldiers of Lord Shiva and injured by weapons like tridents and swords, approached Lord Brahma with great fear. After offering him obeisances, they began to speak in detail of all the events which had taken place. Both Lord Brahma and Vishnu had already known that such events would occur in sacrificial arena of Daksha, and knowing beforehand, they did not go to the sacrifice. When Lord Brahma heard everything from the demigods and the members who attended the sacrifice, he replied, You cannot be happy in executing a sacrifice if you blaspheme a great personality or thereby offend his lotus feet. You cannot have happiness in that way. This is a very important point. There could never be a celebration, there could never be an auspiciousness if the great personality is offended. So this is very important to understand, and these are principles that we as Vaishnavas should always bear in mind. We should never offend devotees because nothing auspicious will come out of it. Unfortunately, very often in kind of mundane dealings, because there's so many dealings we have, like this sacrifice seemingly was a mundane affair where the prestige and position was important. So, the spiritual status and spiritual kind of component of everything was lost. And then when we're dealing with other devotees, when it concerns, money or power or whatever it is, influence, then politics, these all things can get out of hand, and then offenses can be they often just flying around, and this is of course never come to anything auspicious. Anyway, Bhagavatam teaches us a lot. You have excluded Lord Shiva from taking part in the sacrificial result, and therefore you all are offenders at his lotus feet. Still, if you go without mental reservation and surrender unto him, and fall down at his lotus feet, he will be very pleased. Lord Brahma also advised them that Lord Shiva is so powerful that by his anger all the planets and their chief controllers can be destroyed immediately. Also, he said that Lord Shiva was especially sorry because he had recently lost his dear wife and was also very much afflicted by the unkind words of Daksha. Under the circumstances, Lord Brahma suggested it would behoove them to go at once and beg his pardon. Lord Brahma said that no one, not even himself, Indra, all members assembled in the sacrificial arena, or all the sages, could know how powerful Lord Shiva is. Under the circumstances, who would dare to commit an offense at his lotus feet? After thus instructing all the demigods like Pitas, the lords of the living entities, Lord Brahma took them with him and left for the abode of Lord Shiva, known as Kailash Hill. The abode known as Kailasha, full of different herbs and vegetables, and is sanctified by Vedic hymns and mystic yoga practice. Thus the residents of the abode are demigods by birth and have all mystic powers. Besides them, there are other human beings who are known as Kinnaras and Gandharvas, and are accompanied by their beautiful wives, also known as Apsaras or angels. Okay, so we skip till the verse 31 because till that it's a very, very beautiful and scenic description of the Kailash hill. And this is, deep meditation on itself, but it's not what I was intended to do today. So let's just focus on the story and, description of Lord Shiva and demigods praising him and he's responding to them. And there's a philosophical lesson from that. Okay, so the verse 31, the demigods keep on traveling, right, in this Kailash hill region. The verse 31 continues description what they see. They also saw that the bathing gods and their staircases were made of Vaidurya mani. The water was full of lotus flowers. Passing by such lakes, the demigods reached the place where there was a great banyan tree. That banyan tree was 800 miles high. It was a very high banyan tree, 800 miles. 800 miles high. Yes, very. Just think about it. And its branches spread over 600 miles around. The tree cast the fine shade which permanently cooled the temperature, yet there was no noise of birds. So it was a very, very large tree, like super large. What it's like branches spread it over from here over Arisa, I think all the way to Vrindavan, if the tree would be growing here in Mayapur. Anyway, the demigod saw Lord Shiva sitting under that tree, which was competent to give perfection to mystic yogis and deliver all people. As grave as time eternal, he appeared to have given up all anger. Lord Shiva sat there, surrounded by saintly persons like Kuvera, the master of Guhyakas, and the four Kumaras, who were already liberated souls. Lord Shiva was grave and saintly. The demigod saw Lord Shiva situated in his perfection as a master of all senses, knowledge, fruitive activities, and the path of achieving perfection. He was a friend of the entire world, and by virtue of his full affection for everyone, he was very auspicious. Yeah, Shiva means auspicious, right? He was seated on a deer skin and was practicing all forms of austerity. Because his body was smeared with ashes, he looked like an evening cloud. On his hair was a sign of a half moon, a symbolic representation. He was seated on a straw mattress and speaking to all present, including the great sage Narada, to whom he especially spoke about the absolute truth. In regards to Shiva instructing Narada, it's interesting to notice that Shiva also instructed Narada in Dhyanachandra Goswami's book. It is described in Dhyanachandra's Goswami book, Gaura Govinda Charana Smarana Padati, that Shiva instructing Narada Muni about Raganuga Bhakti and all the intricacies and gopis, and he described different manjaris, and it's wonderful. Lord Shiva is a great knower of the highest rasas of devotional service. So maybe that what was happening there, maybe not, but yeah, he was speaking to Narada Muni as well, right? He said Narada, to whom he specifically spoke about the absolute truth. His leg was placed on his right thigh, and his left hand was placed on his left thigh. This sitting posture is called Virasana. In his right hand he held Rudraksha beads, and his finger was in the mode of argument. So picture that, right? It's, I think we could picture that very nicely. All the sages and demigods, headed by Indra, offered their respectful obeisances unto Lord Shiva with folded hands. Lord Shiva was dressed in saffron garments and absorbed in trance, thus appearing to be the foremost of all sages. Right, his wife just died, and so he's dressed in saffron clothes. Lord Shiva's lotus feet were worshipped by both the demigods and demons, but still, in spite of his exalted position, as soon as he saw that Lord Brahma was there among all other demigods, he immediately stood up and offered him respect by bowing down and touching his lotus feet, just as Vamana Dev offered his respectful obeisances to Kashyapa Muni. Why? Because Brahma was the father of Lord Shiva and his superior. And we know that exactly the conflict ensued when in Daksha assembly everybody stood up to greet Lord Shiva, and Daksha did not. He thought he's my brother, right? And he didn't have a high opinion about him. Unfortunately, the materialists are bewildered by the appearance of a devotee sometimes without understanding their exalted position. So it's very important that we don't judge devotees by externals. All the sages were sitting with Lord Shiva, such as Narada and others, also offered their respectful obeisances to Lord Brahma. After being so worshipped, Lord Brahma, smiling, began to speak to Lord Shiva. Lord Brahma said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I know that you are controller of the entire material manifestation, the combination father and mother of the cosmic manifestation, and the Supreme Brahman beyond the cosmic manifestation as well. I know you in that way." This is interesting. Let's see what Srila Prabhupada says here, because it's he's similarly given Shiva more credit that even, basically describing Lord Vishnu's functions. So Srila Prabhupada commentary here. Although Lord Brahma had received very respectful obeisances from Lord Shiva, he knew that Lord Shiva was in a more exalted position than himself. Lord Shiva's position is described in Brahma Samhita. There is no difference between Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva in their original positions. But still Lord Shiva is different from Lord Vishnu. The example is given that the milk in yogurt is not different from original milk from which it was made, right? So Sada Shiva, the original Shiva, and Lord Vishnu, it's like milk yogurt. So yogurt can be obtained from milk, but it cannot turn back to milk. But it's non-different, right? Anyway, that's why Advaita Acharya, we call him incarnation of Mahavishnu and Sada Shiva. So Shiva's position, Shiva Tattva is a very, very difficult Tattva to understand in any case. But in one sense, it is said that offense to the holy name, right? The second offense is to consider the names of the demigods, the position of the demigods like Brahma and Shiva to be equal or superior to Lord Vishnu. But I read, I think in Harinama Chintamani, the more extended commentary of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur as Haridas Thakur says that also those who consider that Lord Shiva is, kind of inferior to Lord Vishnu or, equal to other demigods, something like that, also consider to be offensive. I cannot exactly reproduce, but I was actually very surprised. There's more explanation that we should not put Lord Shiva also on the level with other demigods and think that he's inferior to Lord Vishnu in one sense, right? So that's an interesting thing. Okay, I'll leave you at that. Please do your own research, but we see that Lord Brahma says that he's a combination of mother and father of cosmic manifestation, the supreme Brahman beyond the cosmic manifestation as well. Continuing. My dear Lord Shiva, you create this cosmic manifestation, maintain it, and annihilate it by the expansion of your personality, exactly as a spider creates, maintains, and winds up its web. Again, he said that you create, maintain, and annihilate. And we know that normally it is the function of Brahma to create, Lord Vishnu to maintain, and Lord Shiva to annihilate. Yet he says all this to Lord Shiva, and this is Brahma, and this is Bhagavatam. Again, we need to come to Srila Prabhupada to understand what this means. In this verse, the word Shiva Shakti is significant. Shiva means auspicious and Shakti means energy. There are many types of energies of the Supreme Lord, and all of them are auspicious. Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara are called guna avatars, or incarnations of material qualities. In the material world, we compare these different incarnations from different angles of vision, but since all of them are expansions of the Supreme Auspicious, all of them are auspicious. Although sometimes we consider one quality of nature to be higher or lower than the other. The mode of ignorance, or tamaguna, is considered very much lower than the others, but in the higher sense, it is also auspicious. The example may be given here that the government has both the educational department, the criminal department. An outsider may consider the criminal department inauspicious, but from the government's point of view, it's all important as the educational department and their government finances, both departments are, from the government's point of view, it is as important as the education department, and therefore the government finances both departments equally without discrimination. Anyway, Srila Prabhupada does not really address, but I think we can just assume that, I don't know what we can assume actually. I think we need to go to Acharyas to have explanation of this. But in any case, it's very interesting that Lord Brahma says that he create, maintain, and annihilate by expansion of your personality, exactly as a spider creates, maintains, and winds up its web. Okay, we'll leave it at that. But it's interesting thing to research further. My dear Lord, your Lordship had introduced the system of sacrifices through the agency of Daksha, and thus one may derive the benefits of religious activities and economic development under your regulative principles. The institution of 4 varnas and ashramas is represented. The brahmanas therefore vow to follow the system strictly. O most auspicious Lord, you have ordained the heavenly planets, the spiritual Vaikuntha planets, and the impersonal Brahman sphere as the respective destinations of performers of auspicious activities. Similarly, for others who are miscreants, you have destined different kinds of hell which are horrible and ghastly, yet sometimes it is found that their destinations are just the opposite. It is very difficult to ascertain the cause of this. So we see Brahma continues to address Shiva as if he would basically address Vishnu, as we know, right? It's not the function of demigod Shiva that we know of. So Shiva is definitely, or the Sada Shiva is definitely, has much wider influence. Let's see what Srila Prabhupada says here. This is long purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called the Supreme Will. It is by the Supreme Will that everything is happening. It is said, therefore, that not a blade of grass moves without the Supreme Will. Generally, it is prescribed that performers of pious activities are promoted to the higher planetary system. Devotees are promoted to the Vaikunthas, or spiritual worlds, and the impersonal speculators are promoted to the impersonal Brahman effulges. But sometimes so happens that the miscreants, like Ajamila, is immediately promoted to Vaikuntha Loka simply by chanting the names of Narayan. Also, when Ajamila uttered the vibration, he intended to call his son Narayan. Lord Narayana took it seriously and immediately gave him promotion to Vaikuntha Loka, despite his background, which was full of sinful activities. Similarly, King Daksha was always engaged in pious activities of performing sacrifice, yet simply because of creating a little misunderstanding with Lord Shiva, he was severely taken to task. The conclusion, therefore, is that the Supreme Will is the ultimate judgment. No one can argue upon this. A pure devotee, therefore, submits in all circumstances to the Supreme Will of the Lord, accepting it as all auspicious. Tateno kampam susamiksha mano bujana evatma kritam vipakam hridva vapupir vidathan namaste javeta yomukta pade sadaya bhak. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-8. The purpose of this verse is that when a devotee is in calamitous condition, he takes it as a benediction of the Supreme Lord and takes responsibility himself for his past misdeeds. In such condition, he offers still more devotional service and is not disturbed. One who lives in such a disposition of mind engaged in devotional service is the most eligible candidate for promotion to the spiritual world. In other words, such a devotee's claim for promotion to the spiritual world is assured in all circumstances, because it's a very famous verse, and I think it's very, very important or very relevant, especially in the situation which devotees in Ukraine, for example, find themselves in. And Sri Niranjana Swami was telling how he's communicating with so many devotees, and that devotional service in this situation when the war is raging is increased, and devotees just they know they have no other shelter. They go to temple, they do service, they chant, they go in a temple basement and they chant there whole day, they serve the deities, they cook prasadam, distribute to devotees, and find shelter in sadhu sangha, kirtan, bhagavad katha, more and more. And they don't blame Krishna for what is happening. They take in shelter of him. So yeah, this is a difficult situation for many of us. Theoretical, we can just say, okay, maybe something. I mean, we always have challenging situations every day, and sometimes in the small challenging situations, maybe we don't feel like, I deserved it. We say, why Krishna did it to me? But when push comes to shove, and when the real danger comes, then devotees knows, oh my God, as I don't have any other refuge other than Krishna's lotus feet and his holy name. And it would be wonderful if in any situation we find it. It doesn't have to be the war or, imminent threat of our lives. Any situation, any challenge, this is what devotees need to feel. And easier said than done, right? But therefore, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, right? We need to hear Bhagavatam every day, remind ourselves about this every day, have association of devotees who also feel the same way. And in this way, our mentality and a reminder of this will be constantly with us, so we could actually start living like that. Anyway, I went to this purpose to try to understand why Lord Brahma addresses Lord Shiva as basically in the same way you would address Lord Vishnu, but there's no explanation from Srila Prabhupada to this, so we just carry on. But this is, again, I would definitely want to research it, and please, any of you who want to research it, please, if you find something, share it with all of us, maybe in the commentaries. Would be wonderful. Okay, we're carrying on. My dear Lord, devotees who have fully dedicated their life unto your lotus feet certainly observe your presence as Paramatma and each and every being, and as such they do not differentiate between one living being and another. Such person treat all living entities equally. They never become overwhelmed by anger like animals who can see nothing without differentiation. Yet another far-out statement that Lord Shiva is Paramatma in every living entity. Okay, let's see what Srila Prabhupada says here. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes angry or kills a demon, materially it may appear unfavorable, but spiritually it is a blissful blessing upon him. Therefore, pure devotees do not make any distinction between the Lord's anger and his blessing. They see both with reference to Lord's behavior with others and themselves. A devotee does not find fault with the behavior of the Lord in any circumstances. Basically, going back to the point of the previous purport that Srila Prabhupada described, but again, doesn't explain why Lord Brahma addresses Lord Shiva as Paramatma. But we are carrying on. Persons who observe everything with differentiation, who are simply attached to fruitive activities, who are mean-minded, who always pain to see the flourishing condition of others. This is interesting description of envy, right? Who always pained to see the flourishing condition of others, who thus give distress to them by uttering harsh and piercing words, have already been killed by providence. There is no need for them to be killed again by an exalted personality like you. My dear Lord, if in some places materialists who are already bewildered by insurmountable illusory energy of the Supreme Lord sometimes commit offenses, a saintly person with compassion does not take this seriously, knowing that they commit offenses because they are overpowered by illusory energy. He does not show his prowess to counteract them. My dear Lord, so this is also interesting, right? The powerful personality does not show his prowess to the puny living entities. He doesn't take it seriously. He doesn't take their offenses seriously. Interesting, very interesting. But, we can say we're not powerful personalities. Therefore, we're taking offenses seriously. But again, when we take offenses, we usually tend to commit offenses back. And then it's an unending cycle. So this cycle should end somewhere. And if we understand our philosophy, we understand how everything works, it should end with us. My dear Lord, you are never bewildered by the formidable influence of the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you are omniscient and should be merciful and compassionate towards those who are bewildered by the same illusory energy and are much attached to fruitive activities. My dear Lord Shiva, you are shareholder of a portion of the sacrifice, and you are the giver of the result. The bad priests did not deliver your share, and therefore you destroyed everything, and the sacrifice remains unfinished. Now you can do the needful to take your rightful share. My dear Lord, by your mercy, the performer of the sacrifice, King Daksha, may get back his life. Bhaga may get back his eyes, Brigu his mustache, and Pusha his teeth. So this is what happened, right? They all get a little bit cosmetic surgery by Lord Shiva's servants. O Lord Shiva, may the demigods and the priests whose limbs have been broken by your soldiers recover from the injuries by your grace. O destroyer of the sacrifice, please take your portion of the sacrifice and let the sacrifice be completed by your grace. Of course, the story continues throughout the next chapter, and then we have Lord Shiva actually submitting to the demigods, to Brahmas particularly, please, and putting the, renewing the sacrifice, putting the head of the god back to Daksha, bringing him back to life. Daksha realizes his offense and he prays Lord Shiva, and he repents his offense bitterly. So we can just go to that, right? It's the next chapter. Next chapter, the verse starting with verse 13. After King Daksha was brought back to life. Okay, let's see. Anyway, we can start from the beginning actually. The sage Maitreya said, O mighty armed Vidura, Lord Shiva, being thus specified by the words of Lord Brahma, spoke as follows in answer to Lord Brahma's request. Lord Shiva said, My dear father Brahma, I do not mind the offenses created by the demigods, because these demigods are childish and less intelligent. I do not take a serious view of their offenses, and I have punished them only in order to right them. So he didn't take it seriously, but he thought this punishment, they need to come back to their senses. You need to shake up. He needed to shake them up so they realize, okay, wow, we were really doing something wrong. Lord Shiva continued, since the head of Daksha had already been burned to ashes, he will have a head of a goat. The demigods known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. The demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples, and if alone, he will have to satisfy himself by eating dough made with chickpea flour. But the demigods who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrifice will recover from all their injuries. So Shiva, he forgave them, but still kept all their injuries, especially for Daksha. What is it? Daksha, Bhaga, and Pusha, right? Especially for them, very, very harsh recovery and harsh reminder for what they did. But all other demigods will be fully recovered from their injuries, who did not hinder or did not disagree to give Shiva sacrifice, his sacrificial share. Those who have had their arms cut off will work with the arms of Ashwini Kumara, and those whose hands were cut off will have to do their work with the hands of Pusha. The priests will also have to act in that manner. As for Brigu, he will have the beard from the god's head. Okay, that's... Lord Shiva forgave them, but gave all of them harsh reminder of what they did, leaving them in a very crippled position or very comical position, right? He get the god head or god beard to Brigu. Anyways, this is, we should never offend Vaishnavas, especially Lord Shiva. That's Very, very clear reminder what happens if one does. The great sage Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, all the personalities present were very much satisfied in heart and soul upon hearing the words of Lord Shiva, who is the best among the benedictors." Thereafter, Brigu, the chief of the great sages, invited Lord Shiva to come to the sacrificial arena. Thus the demigods, accompanied by sages, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, all went to the place where the great sacrifice was being performed. After everything was executed exactly as directed by Lord Shiva, Daksha's body was joined to the head of the animal meant to be killed in the sacrifice. When the animal's head was fixed on the body of King Daksha, Daksha was immediately brought to consciousness, and he awakened from sleep. The king saw Lord Shiva standing before him. At that time, when Daksha saw Lord Shiva, who rides upon a bull, his heart, which was polluted by envy of Lord Shiva, was immediately cleansed. And as the water in a lake is cleansed, just as the water in a lake is cleansed by autumn rains. King Daksha wanted to offer praise to Lord Shiva, but as he remembered the ill-fated death of his daughter Sati, his eyes filled with tears, and in bereavement his voice choked up, and he could not say anything. At this time, King Daksha, afflicted by love and affection, was very much awakened to his real senses. With great endeavor he pacified his mind, checked his feelings, and with pure consciousness began to offer prayers to Lord Shiva. King Daksha said, "My dear Lord Shiva, I committed a great offense against you, but you are so kind that instead of withdrawing your mercy, you have done me a great favor by punishing me. You and Lord Vishnu never neglect even useless, unqualified brahmanas. Why then should you neglect me, who am engaged in performing sacrifices? My dear, great and powerful Lord Shiva, you were created from the mouth of Lord Brahma in order to protect the Brahmanas in pursuing education, austerities, vows, and self-realization. As protector of Brahmanas, you always protect the regulative principles they follow, just as coward boys keep a stick in his hand and give protection to the cows. I did not know your full glories. For this reason I threw arrows of sharp words at you in the open assembly, although you did not take them into account. I was going down to hell because of my disobedience of you, who are the most respectable personality, but you took compassion upon me and saved me by avoiding punishment. I request that you be pleased by your own mercy, since I cannot satisfy you by my words." The great sage Maitreya said, "Thus being pardoned by Lord Shiva, King Daksha, with the permission of Lord Brahma, again began the performance of the yajna along with the great learned sages, the priests, and others." Okay, so this is the very, very instructive story, which displays, I think, to a major extent and the glories of Lord Shiva, and actually the glories which are almost equate him to Lord Vishnu in the praises of Lord Brahma again. The position of Lord Shiva is very, very difficult to understand, very mysterious, and we should never, he's always subordinate to Lord Vishnu, but he is no less than Lord Vishnu nevertheless. So it's very, very interesting position. He is not a Jiva Tattva, he's not a Vishnu Tattva, he's Shiva Tattva. Shiva Tattva, again, is very difficult to understand, but it is very, very exalted position. And today is the day of Lord Shiva, Mahasivaratri, and so we need to pray to Lord Shiva for the ability to become pure devotees, for the ability to become the lovers of Shri Radha and Krishna and their servants. And as I said earlier, Lord Shiva personally was instructed Narada Muni, in the most intimate and confidential details of Raganuga sadhana. And so Lord Shiva can also instruct us and help us to become qualified, to be prepared to go back to Goloka Vrindavan, not Vaikuntha, right? The place where all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas aspire to go is Goloka Vrindavan in one of the four rasas, and primarily, of course, majority of Gaudiya Vaishnavas aspire for the conjugal rasa in the role of maidservants of Srimati Radharani. And this is what Lord Chaitanya specifically came to give. He specifically came to give Braja Bhakti, but out of this, specifically Unata Jvala Rasa. The highest rasa, the highest mellow is a mellow of the conjugal love. And we know again, most of our acharyas are manjaris, servants of Srimati Radharani. And so their aspirations, we are the one who follow. We are Rupa Nugas, we follow Rupa Goswami, and we follow Rupa Manjari. And for majority of devotees, that would be the desired destination. But yet, if another relationship with Krishna is something which attracts them, of course, that should be cultivated, right? Either Vatsalya, Sakhya, or even Dasya in Braja Bhakti especially. But again, somebody aspires to go to Vaikuntha, which is not really the aspirations of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but who knows if somebody wants to go there. Krishna fulfills all of our desires. Really, what we need to cultivate the desire, and whatever we desire, Krishna can fulfill. Nothing is off limits for him. So we should know what we wish for, and again we pray to Lord Shiva as the greatest Vaishnava to give us mercy and grant us qualification to keep our aspirations alive and keep our devotional service pure, and especially, as this story instructs, keep our free from offenses to Vaishnavas, because this is the only block which seriously can hinder our progress on devotional service. Everything else, our disqualification, our weaknesses and so on, it's all easily overcome. But offenses to the Vaishnavas, especially offenses to great Vaishnavas, but offenses to all Vaishnavas, are something which is very, very difficult to overcome. And Lord Shiva's story and Lord Shiva's mercy is there for us to be able to be free from that, Anyway, so we leave it at that. See you all tomorrow. Tomorrow I think we'll continue our reading of Bhagavatam. Jai. Srila Shiva ki jai, Vaishnavyattha Shambhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shivaratri Mahamahotsava ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Please support our channel by taking 1 second of your precious time to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.